Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to welcome you on behalf of Bologna Fiere, Nürnberg Messe, and IFAM Organics International. We'll have here a session about how to feed the planet and what can organic contribute to that. My name is Markus Arbenz. I am the Executive Director of IFAM Organics International, and I would like to welcome you warmly to this session. And yes, I would like to encourage you to come a little bit more in front, to stay here, to stay close, also to see people, to feel people, to see actually what all is going to be about. You will see here several cameras, because what we're doing right here is not only having the event and having a nice discussion here among us in that small group, but no, we want actually to carry the message into the world. There are several people around which will tweet, which will go into social media, and we will have the videos here, the videos which will be later on in one or the other form made available to the world. So that's what we are going to do today. You all know, as feeding the planet, energy for life. This is the topic of the expo. Feeding the planet sustainably or not at all, this is our topic here. So you hear already a message in this title, and you hear already actually that we want to talk about sustainability, and we want to reflect actually how to do that so that there is equal or even better opportunity for the future generations to come. Organic agriculture has a track record over 100 years, and organic agriculture has something to contribute. But organic agriculture has also to move, to develop, and how this could be done, this will be part of our discussion. We will have our discussion in two parts. First part is a panel here from a representative from FAO, Nadia Shalapa. She's working actually at FAO, advocating for sustainability in agriculture for more than 20 years, I would say. Yes, you started at Rio, I think. Not Rio plus 20, but Rio. So it's more than 20 years because Rio plus 20 already took place a few years ago. We have Lukas Wischek here. Lukas Wischek is from the European Union. So he's there for quite some years in the DG Agri and working actually in rural development. And we have here Patrick Holden. Patrick Holden, and I would call him an old activist, an old friend, which is really upholding the flag of sustainability and of sustainability in agriculture from various aspects. First, being a farmer himself, but also having directed the biggest organization for organic agriculture in the UK, and having now recently, well, even not so recently actually anymore, created his own trust, the Sustainable Food Trust. So they all will be with us this afternoon, they all will discuss with us, and they all will also debate here in front of us. It's perfectly fine to disagree, so we agree to disagree. So it's not that we want to present one message here, but we would like to enable, facilitate a discussion which you also should be part. There will be moments actually for possibilities for interactions. Now, before we start, I would like to introduce you our special guests. Our special guest, which is actually a little bit for me a mentor, but also a host actually of this event. This is Antonio Compagnoni from ICEA, AgroBio Mediterraneo, from FederBio. So he has actually many hats on. He's been in the World Board for a long time, in the World Board of IFAM Organics International. And Antonio brought us a nice little surprise. The first surprise is actually that his first gift to us, to Expo, is actually that he managed, among others of course, with many others, to initiate an action network. A network of people that bring out the message that organic can feed the world. And this action network is active. He has embraced many people to be part of this one, and they will actually launch a manifesto very soon when they manage to actually get attention from the Italian Minister of Agriculture. So this is one initiative of Antonio. First surprise. The second surprise is much more hands-on. is actually, today we're talking about food security. We're talking about problems of 800 million people being hungry, but also of 2 billion people having micronutrient deficiencies, and maybe also people, 500 people being obese and having a risk for their health. So all this will be our this afternoon's topic. It's an abstract theme because we all had lunch, and it's important that we had lunch, that we had a good lunch, because only with a good lunch also we can think very properly. So, but before we go into abstract discussion, actually I asked Antonio to show his food, or the food of his family of 1 week. Antonio, please come to us, and please, the microphone, you need a microphone.
Yeah, taking one. Meanwhile, I stay here, not so important anyway. Buongiorno a tutti e benvenuti a questa bellissima iniziativa, sempre dentro alla settimana del biologico e all'Action Network che biologico può nutrire il pianeta. I think I should, just to make it easier, speak English. My Italian friends will forgive me. Okay, so, but by the way, I was very excited on the proposal that Marcus gave me to bring my food. Here actually there is only a small part because the rest is coming. Now, this shows how the real problem is access to food, even here. And we are lucky that we have Natura C organic supermarket that is giving me the help, because I wouldn't bring from home all these products. It's also a question of energy. But I can start saying that, Marcus, you stop me when you want. First of all, thank you for reminding about the Action Network, and I think it's not us, is us, all of us, because every one of you should be part, not only as organization, like all the IFOMs are inside, but also single individuals, because we are at Expo. Expo is I think is the right mirror of what is our society, in the good and in the bad. A lot of bad, but it's the truth. But we do have a responsibility as organic movement to be, because we are in the large world, we are getting more and more recognition, but we are still not in the full picture. We are not over the big boulevard. We are a little bit in the side, but that's what is in reality. But the organic movement wanted to testify that there is something and they can give content. And over the very light version of the Carta of Milan, we need to bring some more content and to go to the point. And I think action like today are exactly what we are expecting, to deepen down and have something impacting the UN director when we come in Milan on the 16th. We will give him our maintenance, our let's say deepening down how to implement the Milano Carta in a real way, in an organic way.
Okay, that's the manifesto you're talking about then. So now let's get concrete.
I stay concrete, but just one good thing that Expo is giving is that they put together all the Italian organic movement together with the international one. And I hope this will not stop when the Expo stops. And that's a side thing. About the food, of course I brought the food from here. From where it comes my family is a 5-family practically, because we have, as my wife, 25 years we're living together, and then we have a son of 24 and another one of 19. Both males, very tall, big, and they eat a lot, not so much, but and try to be in balance. After, let's say, the adolescent time where they were kind of refusing a little bit of their organic diet at the start when they were born, now they are very much online. We are not perfect, but at least on the organic side, I think we have 80-90%, maybe sometimes even 100% of organic products in our diet. Here is missing the greens that are coming in, but now I can still tell you that most of the time now I put some examples, because of course I cannot get here my trouts, we fish, our friends are fishing and giving us, we have our freezer full, and every week at least we have once the fish, and is a local fish, tuna fish. Sometimes we do it in summer, but otherwise other kind of fish like more or local, like the shellfish from the Adriatic. I brought from home one thing that is what my friend is producing, is balsamico from Modena. I am from Modena, so it's a sometimes we use also the traditional one that is not very much on sale because it's really a family thing that we do, and it takes 20 years and so we are not using every day. But, of course, olive oil. The butter, I took this one, but normally we take the clarified one. And one thing, of course, we have some processed products, but most of the time we are producing our own food. My wife and me, mostly my wife, she has a situation that she lives and works in the same place, so she has time, and I do also sometimes work at home, and we like to cook at least once a day, maybe twice, and that I think is quite important. And most of the products, okay, now I take it from the supermarket, but normally I take it especially in the right season, because from spring to fall we are blessed by having a lot of fruits and vegetables locally, and also and so we get it right away. And I think 70% of the products we eat, we know the people that are producing it.
Okay, Antonio, we talked a lot about the young generation. How are your kids reacting? What is their favorite from this?
Okay, you can see, for example, the wine is more from us, the three old part of the family. We don't drink much, especially during the weekend. And I took a Lambrusco, that is a local wine. Took another one because I know the wine and the winery, but normally I have another winery local one that I take. The kids, instead they like to have juices. They like they like biscuits in the morning more than bread and butter and marmalade or other things we do. They like less, let's say, some kind of vegetable like onions. we put them very thin, and they eat it inside the sauce. They started also cooking themselves recently, because we have this trend now with Master Chef and this kind of thing. That is helping, taking them into making food, not just eating food.
Okay, Antonio, thank you very much for this.
Normally we eat all together. It's not a specific diet for one or the other. So a 78 years old person with two age, two young guys.
Okay, here, Antonio, what is important for you? Cooking is important for you. You said fresh food, which is missing right here.
It's coming. I'm gonna see it.
You say also spending time together, having a socialized event when eating. I think, thank you very much, Antonio, it's very nice. We keep it here because it should remind us also, while we're talking about abstract things, that it's very concrete, that we can touch it, and of course we can taste it. Now we turn to the global level. We turn actually to a different level of the problem. And our first speaker, Patrick Holden, he will set the scene, and he will actually try to answer the question, what are the issues? Hang on, I forgot something. I wanted to play the video first. We'll do the video introduction. Yeah, can I have the first one, the first video, please? So sorry, Patrick, that was a bit too fast.
Suis formel, nourrir 9 milliards de personnes en 2050, même un peu plus, et qui est prévu avec une agriculture sans pesticides, c'est absolument possible. Il faut changer de cap. Les recettes anciennes ne valent plus aujourd'hui.
The disadvantage of monoculture, of course, is that if you try to grow corn, you have to use so many herbicides and so many insecticides that it's bad for the environment.
Agriculture is the antithesis of industrial agriculture.
Kila ujeni kisiri ya watu kusimba uko notindira bwino ngamba kubera bachima bamuchora meli.
Humus, der Boden ist sehr schlüssig. Das 20. Jahrhundert war das Jahrhundert der Chemie in der Landwirtschaft, zumindest, wahrscheinlich auch noch darüber hinaus. Das 21. Jahrhundert ist definitiv das Jahrhundert der Biologie.
It is not a Stone Age technology, it is highly scientific based technology.
We are calling this technology post-school.
L'objectif est bien, puis aller avec les milliers, Queremos que Senegal es nuevo en Senegal.
Le estamos llamando una agricultura sostenible.
The farmers look as the lowest element in the society. No, it's actually goes the first. No food, nobody.
Okay, this was a film trailer from Marie Robin, and if you're more interested, then you can get actually to the internet and search for the crops of the world. Just a few impressions, a few pictures actually, which you all touched in the discussion. That was maybe the emotional start. Now let's go in the more analytic start, and I would like to have the next video from a professor explaining us the issue for the next 10 minutes. Can I have the second video, please?
Hello, my name is Kevin Fraser, and I work at the University of Guelph in Ontario, Canada. Mostly what I do is to try and understand one of the biggest issues facing our world over the next 50 years. How can we feed 9 billion people? To start, let's consider two images. The first shows us how much food you could buy for $1 on a market in the African nation of Zambia in 2008. The second shows us how much you could buy on the same market for $1 in 2009. What happened in between was skyrocketing food prices, a crisis that has thrown tens, maybe even hundreds of millions into poverty. What's more, the victims haven't suffered quietly. They've rioted, smashed markets, and toppled governments. Remember the revolutions that swept the Middle East in 2011? They all began with people in the street upset over the price of food. What's more, many of the world's top agricultural experts believe that this is just the tip of the iceberg. Unless we figure out new strategies to deal with global food security, we may be entering a new and dangerous phase of human history where food, water, and energy shortages threaten not only worse poverty, but also civic unrest and international conflict. There are a number of reasons for this alarm. The first reason is that in most years we produce only just enough food to cover our uses. In fact, in 6 of the last 11 years, we actually consumed slightly more food than we produced. And the buffer we take from one year to the next has been steadily falling. So our system already seems pretty fragile. But it's when we look into the future that things grow very dire indeed. Rising populations and our rich diets that take a lot more resources to produce than they used to are driving our demand for food up. And scientists figure we'll need 50% more food by 2050. But producing this food is going to be hard. This is because the rising demand is coming precisely at the same time as high energy prices and climate change are making food harder and more expensive to produce. But hidden in these grim statistics is a 4-part blueprint we need to follow. But since each of these strategies is extremely controversial, each requires careful analysis. The first strategy includes science and technology. Today, a major scientific hurdle is to develop technologies that will help farmers reach their potential in terms of the amount of food they produce. Some scientists figured we could easily boost production by 50% just by deploying currently available technologies. This is especially important in regions like sub-Saharan Africa, where many farmers only produce about 20% of what they could due to a lack of good quality seeds, fertilizer, and better equipment. But it's not as if we can take the seeds and equipment that seem to work on North American farms and simply give them away to African farmers. This doesn't work because African soils, cultures, and communities are totally different than in North America or Europe. So scientists must partner with farmers to develop locally appropriate solutions to local challenges. Just using science and technology won't be enough, however. And this is where the second strategy comes in. We must do a better job at distributing the food we've got. To develop this strategy, we need to consider an uncomfortable truth about today's food system. If you take all the food on the planet, and divided equally by all the people on the planet, there is plenty. About 2,700 calories per person per day and 75 grams of protein per person per day. That's more than enough. But because we feed a lot of our food to animals, or turn corn into ethanol, or simply waste vast amounts, maybe 20 to 50% of the world's food is wasted, or because the people who need the food are too poor to afford it, hunger abounds. So we need to establish ways of making sure that less food is wasted and the food we do have is better distributed. One way of doing this is through ensuring that international aid organizations have better access to food stores that can be used as short-term food aid in times of crisis. Third, if we want to avoid a hungry future, we need to make sure we keep a healthy population of farms and farmers around our cities. This means we need to support local food systems, which are important because they stand as a buffer between individual consumers and problems that might occur in global markets. Even if local food systems do not feed all of us all the time, they are a critical line of defense against hunger. Fourth, none of this will be possible without stronger regulation and proactive government policy. I was confronted with the need for better regulation while on a recent tour of a feedlot that was licensed to hold 100,000 cows. There I saw a 410,000 ton pile of manure. That's the weight of about 35,000 elephants. It was a sad reminder of the need for governments to get serious about promoting more sustainable farming. Of course, each of these four strategies has its drawbacks. Critics of technology and markets argue that new technologies inevitably seem to enrich corporations more than helping humanity or the environment. Anti-regulation voices argue that all governments ever do is tie farmers in red tape and stifle innovation. Arguments for more equitable food redistribution causes some to mutter about the effects of Big Brother, forcing us all to eat a uniform diet. But most daunting, perhaps, is the argument that with a world population poised to reach 9 billion by mid-century, there will never be a way for modern communities to feed themselves by means of local, small farms. Our cities are simply too big, our demands too great to be able to feed ourselves without relying on extremely intensive farms. Hello, my name is Evan Fraser, and I work at the University of Guelph in Ontario, Canada. Mostly what I do is to try and understand one of the biggest issues facing our...
Okay, we just restarted the same video. Sorry about that. Yeah, he said already some of the scene. Now you're welcome actually to make your contribution and of course to challenge wherever you feel it needs to be challenged. Patrick, the floor is yours. And do you want to go over there, maybe? Yeah.
Well, he said a lot of important issues, but I don't agree with it all. Like, what I do agree with is a lot drawn from my own experience, which is that if we are going to feed, we don't feed the world sustainably, we can't really go on as we are. I mean, there's no question at all from my own experience that we're on a collision course going towards a cliff edge at the moment, and our present farming food systems are highly unsustainable. And everything I'm going to say is really drawn from my own experience, because I think if you are confronted with these enormous challenges which we've just seen about in the film, it's very hard to make sense of how one can respond to them unless one has a point of reference. My point of reference comes from my own farm in Wales. I was there yesterday evening and I'm going back this afternoon, and I should be milking my cows tomorrow morning. And I've been there for 42 years, farming as sustainably as I've been able to. And there was something about occupying a piece of land for a long period of time and observing the consequences of your actions on the soil, on the animals, on the plants, and on the nature, which is extraordinary. Great privilege actually to occupy a piece of land that long and to see what happens over time. And my main conclusion is that sustainable food production is possible. and it can work applied to scale. But I think in order to understand what's needed to feed the world to scale, one needs to start with the small, with the cell, because I think a farm is like a cell of the food system. So what have I learned from 42 years on my farm in Wales? I've learned that we have to farm within nature's limits, and we need to start by building soil. It all starts with whether farmers have the capacity not just to retain the soil that we've got, but actually build soil faster than has happened in geological time spans, and certainly a lot faster than farmers are thinking that it will be possible to do at present. And my experience is that it is possible to speed up soil generation, but we have to base our farming practices on crop rotation and diversity. We have to farm using the minimum amount of non-renewable inputs. I mentioned I haven't used any nitrogen fertilizer, or I haven't used any pesticides either for 42 years. And we are trying to practice the law of return on our farm by returning all the nutrients and storing them better than we used to. And I think if you do that right, it's amazing how that can build soil fertility. We need to respect the principle of diversity in the soil, in what we grow, around what we grow. And if we combine that with observing the law of return, then I think it's possible to actually build soil fertility over time. And what's interesting about my farm is that the crops that we're growing this year the yields are steadily increasing, and the crops seem to be reaching record yields each year. Our capacity to stock animals, to grow oats and peas, which is what we feed to the cows, and to build biological soil fertility is improving year on year. I also think it's important to understand the principle of scale. So one example, we have a dairy herd, and surely dairy farming ought to be based on the capacity of the cows to walk to grass and back twice a day. That's a self-limiting maximum number of cows you can have in a dairy herd, which is to do with the geography of the land, and it also has a social dimension. So the principle of scale needs to be right. At the end of the film we heard about the importance of a sort of local food system as a buffer, but surely it's crucial to food security and food systems resilience and maintaining a sense of relationship with one's food and a sense of one's own identity not only as a farmer but also as a consumer of food. And also we need to think about order and harmony and beauty in our work. It's no accident that beautiful things work better, because in nature there is harmony and there is beauty and there is order. And so therefore we ought, as farmers, to be striving for order and beauty in the way that we farm and what we create. And the more beautiful our farms are, probably the better they will function. This is something that Doug Tompkins has mentioned a lot, and I think he's 100% right. We also need to observe that really as farmers we are doctors. We are doctors of public health, or we should strive to become doctors of promoting the health of the plants and the animals that we nurture. And if we do that well, then we will be the custodians of public health. And that is possible, I believe, by understanding all the principles that I've just outlined. Now, while we can't go on, our 21st century farming, by and large, is a mining operation. We're using up non-renewable earth capital in all its various forms at a frightening rate. There are fewer and fewer farms, food companies, packers, processors, abattoirs responsible for a greater and greater percentage of all the food that we're eating. And that acceleration of concentration is getting worse, not better. There's all the loss of connection that goes with that. The loss of the anonymity, the lack of care, the lack of relationship, which exacerbates those tendencies. And the migration that we're seeing, particularly in Europe this week, is directly and indirectly related to our globalized food systems, which are the primary cause of many of the conflicts which are displacing people and forcing them to take unbelievable risks to move to other countries where they think it's safer. A lot of that, as has just been said in the film, goes back to food security issues. And I think that we're heading for other shocks that we probably can't even imagine that are in the pipeline, that when we look back we'll say, well, we really didn't see that coming, but perhaps it was inevitable, which are just beginning to manifest now, but it's only going to get worse. So it's clear to me that our present food systems are completely unsustainable, and the change that is needed is not going to be a change which should be confined to a niche market or a small movement, which the organic movement has been until now, because unless all our food systems change, we won't be able to deliver what's needed. So that brings me to the question, what are the barriers to the change that's required? And what are the key features of the addictions that we have that we're going to deal with? We have to deal with if we're going to move to more sustainable systems. Well, the first one, I think, is an addiction to nitrogen fertilizer. Nitrogen fertilizer is the key driver of the majority of our food systems on the planet today. And it's enabled farmers to grow monoculture and specialize in growing long runs of crops without a fertility building phase. And it seems to me that one of the key barriers is the challenge of moving back to mixed farming. So if you look around the world now, there are very few mixed farmers apart from organic farmers actually. Farmers who rely on legumes to rebuild depleted fertility after the arable cropping phase. So we have to go back to mixed farming as the primary driver of food production, locally and globally. It doesn't matter what part of the world you're farming in, mixed farming of one sort or another will have to be the driver for the future. Otherwise we will not be able to wean ourselves off our addiction to nitrogen fertilizer. Roundup. I want to mention Roundup because Roundup is the drug of choice as a herbicide if you're using nitrogen fertilizer. It's used so widely today that it's in the air that we breathe, in the rainwater, in the drinking water, and it's in our bodies. And Roundup is a potent endocrine disruptor. And I just heard last week at a conference in Sicily that it also has a devastating impact on soil biodiversity. So Roundup is not only responsible for the, almost certainly now, as the WHO has endorsed, for the increase in cancers, it's also compromising the soil biome function, and therefore it's going to be an essential prerequisite for a return to more sustainable food systems to stop using Roundup. I mentioned the soil biome. The key to rebuilding soil fertility will be to understand that the soil is like the stomach of the plant, like our own stomachs, full of biodiversity, and we need to return to farming systems that build the soil biome if we're going to feed the world sustainably. In connection with the soil biome and maintaining its health, we need to wean ourselves off antibiotics. 80% of all the antibiotics used in America go to livestock, it's only 50% in the UK. But antibiotics are compromising the human biome and they're also compromising animal biomes. And unless we sort our dependency on antibiotics out, we're in big trouble. Another barrier is sewage. Again, I learned very recently that fire retardants are finding their way into sewage on a huge global scale. They are endocrine disruptors, and because of that, it's no longer safe to recycle sewage products back onto the land. So unless we sort that sort of a problem out, we can't obey the law of return in agriculture. So we've got a massive problem on our hands there. How are we going to deal with the fact that we're contaminating our sewage to such an extent that it's no longer safe to use in agriculture? This is a huge barrier to change. Seeds, a continuing reduction of seed diversity, a massive problem for all farmers, including organic farmers like myself, who come to depend more and more on purchased seeds and not making sure that we are trying to breed both the animals under our care and the plants so that they become adapted to the terroir of the soil and the climate that they are existing in through epigenetic responses to their environment. Lack of true cost accounting. At the moment, there is not a good enough business case to farm in a sustainable way, so farmers who want to farm sustainably are prohibited from so doing because there isn't enough profit in it. And unless we tackle that, I'm going to a conference next week where we're talking about agriculture and food systems externalities, how we can put a price on all the various hidden damaging consequences of our present food system and on the beneficial outcomes of more sustainable practices. and try to find ways in which they are reflected either in the costs that farmers bear when they farm, or the benefits they receive for farming in such a way which delivers benefits to the environment or public health. Unless we can do that through redirecting subsidies, through introducing taxes, through certification, because we can use the market to an extent to do this, and through other mechanisms like insurance policies. There are various mechanisms at our disposal where we can reconnect the costs and benefits of different farming systems to the prices that we have to pay in the shops for our food, or that farmers have to bear when they do things which are damaging to emissions or depletion of natural capital or to biodiversity or other forms of social impact. Unless we can do that, unless we can create a business case which is better to farm in a sustainable way than it is to farm in a way which is damaging to the environment, we are not going to see the change that is necessary. So perhaps one of the biggest barriers to change of all is economic, and that will depend on change policy, and that in turn will depend on the public understanding much of these issues, which they don't at the moment. But, and I'll stop here, the change that's needed for all the difficulty, the massive economic problems, the political problems, some of the technical problems that I just outlined, is inevitable, because the truth is there's no alternative. We are heading towards a cliff edge, and I think the cliff edge is going to come sooner than we think, and there is good cause for hope. But that is the young generation, the so-called millennials, the people who are basically under 30, they are beginning to change their behaviour. Maybe they're absorbing this stuff in ways which we can't even understand. There's a sort of psychic internet going on. But they are no longer being so loyal to industrial food production. And I've just met in the last couple of months heads of two very large big food companies who are really worried that the millennials are no longer buying their products. They're switching to healthier and more sustainable products. And this is going to cause behavioural change in the big food companies. And in a way, the market is a more sensitive instrument than the politicians. The politicians will come to realise that this change is needed after the market responds. So I think there's a lot to be hopeful for.
There is, of course, opportunity also to ask a question. So think about maybe a question from your side. I'll start with a question, Patrick. If you look at your messages, one thing was striking to me when you talked about soil-based agriculture. At the same time here at the Expo, we see a lot talk about vertical farming, but of course much of them not being soil-based. What do you think about this?
I think that if you're talking about hydroponic farming,
yeah, or vertical, like in towers and this kind of thing.
It's basically hydroponic. It's nutrients in solution.
Or under the field.
The soil. If you feed plants nutrients in solution, you're compromising their stomachs. Plants spend a third of their metabolic energy exuding sugary saps into the root zone, which nourish a community of bacteria and fungi, which in a soil-grown plant will enable them to digest the breakdown of soil humus. All of that's out the window if you're using a hydroponic method. And not only that, where are we getting the nutrients from? What is the cost of fixing the nitrogen, mining the phosphorus, etc.? I know there are some more advanced hydroponic systems where you're using waste in solution, but it seems to me almost intuitively obvious that you're never going to feed the world based on hydroponic systems. Interestingly enough, if you buy salad crops in a UK supermarket now, and I imagine it's true in mainland Europe as well, they will not have been grown in soil. So none of the lettuces, tomatoes, cucumbers, peppers, any of the salad crops that you can buy in any of the UK supermarkets, unless you're buying organic, have been grown in soil any longer. So the hydroponic revolution is already with us. It's coming under the radar screen. Very few people realise it.
Okay, unfortunately not a grim message. Maybe some of you have other questions to Patrick? Everyone, you're a good icebreaker.
Yeah, we have exchanged before, but maybe for this audience. Since I studied 30 years ago agriculture, I'm aware of the true cost accounting, and we have not really had a breakthrough. We talk about it, we've demanded more people buy in, but we are not heading there. Why? And how would it change?
Well, I think it's very interesting to look at the development of the history of the organic movement back to the 70s when I started farming. We pretty quickly realised when we started our farm in 1973 that we were less profitable than the farmers around us because we were trying to farm without nitrogen fertiliser and pesticides. So we had this bright idea, why don't we just charge extra for the food we're producing, take our story to the public, and then they'll give us a premium in the shops and we'll develop a market. And that was basically the story of the development of the organic standards in the organic market. So we, the organic movement, decided that we would deal with the problem of uncosted externalities by creating a premium market for people who were prepared to pay more for our food. It was based on an educated consumer, but I think we've got one thing, which is that the scale of the negative externalities, the uncosted damage to the environment, or the depletion of soil fertility, or the cause of the pollution and all the other costs, was so great that it would give the farmers who caused that damage, who were really mining the capital of nature, a massive advantage in the marketplace. So even though we've been successful in building the organic market, or whatever you want to call it, it's pretty small in the UK right now, but it's a little bit bigger in Germany, obviously, and other European countries, it's still niche. And we have to change the whole of agriculture. So unless we tackle this issue of external costs and we make food pricing more honest, because at the moment it is dishonest, we are never going to break through into the mainstream. We have a massive problem here. I think the key to your question is public understanding of the issues, and at the moment most people don't realise this going on. We've got to do more to bring in the public to this discussion about why mining all the natural capital of the planet to produce short-term surpluses of food, not even surpluses these days, is just a road to nowhere.
Thank you, Patrick. I think we'll come back to this issue of true cost accounting. We'll hear Patrick again. For the moment, actually, I saw this table being more completed. Antonio, you want to tell me what you have put on addition now? What now makes a difference?
And not even all, but normally, especially this time of the year from spring to fall, we need to have a lot of fresh meat. It's nice to have, especially when it's, you get it from your own garden, when you have the privilege to have some little piece of land, not so a big farm like Patrick, but 3,000 square meters I have. And then apart from this year that I'm organizing a conference for next week for the summer, I was very lousy. I didn't have time to irrigate with water that I have my wells, so I had to buy most of my vegetables that normally I produce myself, but normally walking distance from my house. So here something is missing, but we are privileged to have fruits, vegetables, any kind. That should be part of our. It's good, and especially for the kids, like Patrick said, the new generation, they are getting to the point. They are getting. I mean, of course, when you have to make young ones at the beginning, they want to say, no, we are not the same as you. But then they understand. If you so well the seed of change, they are taking it so well, and they have friends, and they are all in that direction.
They see it well.
I repeat that.
Can you repeat that?
So I feel like my wife and myself, with our kids, we are very much on the same level. We are really understanding the world. I mean, they are much faster than us.
They see things in a different way. It's as if they've absorbed. It's this term epigenetics. Something is going on. It's like knowledge transfer. Our children are understanding something. They've taken some of the knowledge, which we may not have taught them, but they've absorbed it in some way. So they have a wisdom which they've inherited from their parents, which they are now taking into their life. They're doing it a different way than we did it, but they're doing it. That is what is so exciting about this millennial thing. And it's sort of unpredictable. It can go faster than we can imagine it can go.
I really hope so, and I agree. I see my older son friends that are attracted to what we do. They are helping me making up the conference, and their way of life is a bit different compared to what used to be like the 80s generation or 90s. It's a different thing. It's not yet the majority, we have to be clear, but the seed of change is growing up and it's strong.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. Also, thank you very much, actually, Patrick. You had a little bit the ungrateful job to bring the grim message and also maybe to also highlight the issues, but we can see actually also through the actions, milking tomorrow morning, bring the vegetable gardens, fruits here, actually, and referring to the next generation. I think there is not only the negative aspect, but there is also a lot of positive aspect and positive energy. Now, this was the voice from the movement, if you want, from the activists, from the people that act. But we want to have next here the voice actually from the global perspective, from the global view, from the United Nations. And Nadia Shalapa has been mandated by the Secretary General, the Secretary General, Graciano da Silva, actually to be here among us and actually to make the analysis and the message from the perspective of the United Nations. Nadia, the floor is yours.
Maybe we should put the presentation on. Hello everybody. This is a picture from Expo Shanghai in 2010. It was about cities. And in that exhibition there was some food featured. And what they showed were vertical agriculture in big buildings, skylines, underground agriculture, and also floating cities. And this is because really we have a problem of land. I hope that with this expo we will bring different perspectives on linking agriculture with the land. How do you go forward? Okay. I was asked to talk about FAO's policy. I mean, it's a bit boring to talk about policies, but I'm going to try to make it a bit more attractive for you. So, as an institution, we represent what governments are. Is there any person here who's not Italian? A foreign person? Do you know what's the policy of your Ministry of Agriculture and Organic Agriculture?
No. No, I know it. Because I think that he is pushing a lot in building, what is the diversity, biodiversity.
Okay.
And finally,
thank you. And finally, I think, and I'm trusting him because he's pushing very much indeed in this direction for biodiversity, food around the international way.
What country is yours?
I'm from Italy, obviously, and here you have an example of Mediterranean diet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but the policy of the Ministry of Agriculture for agriculture as a whole is much more for conventional agriculture. It's always, a small part is dedicated to organic. And this is reflected in the FAO. This is what I'm trying to tell you. It's a minority. I mean, organic agriculture, even if it's 72 billion US dollar in 2000, the last statistics, and 2 million people, still represent only 1% of the lands which are farmed organically. So in proportion, it's a small sector. And this is why we are a reflection of what governments do. So it's a small program, and it's not a priority, but it's an option among others. Now, till the establishment of FAO in 1946, just after the World War II, till 1999, organic agriculture did not exist in FAO at all. It was considered to be a flower power, unscientific way. This is what governments thought. And it's only in 1999 that finally they came together and they said, well, we are going to have an organic program because what they saw mostly were export opportunities, thinking that developing countries could export to the north and have a price premium. And this is the reason why the program started in 1999. And I must say that in the last 15 years, all the projects we have done in FAO, for which I'm responsible in FAO, have been mainly working at the demand of countries in low potential areas, where we can do really much. We're not going to produce a lot of grain, let's try to see what we can do with organic. Basically, there are of course exceptions. And now since Rio, 2 years ago, when the green economy was launched, there is this revival to try to look for an economy which is more green, but then we talk about green economy without really knowing what it means. We talk about agroecology and so forth, and organic is part of it. Now, when we talk about food security, if we imagine that this room is the world, this is the planet, okay? We represent the planet here. I would say that half of this room has a problem, an issue with food. A serious issue, in proportion, of course. This is because today we still have 795 million people who go to bed hungry. That would be about 5 of you. We still have over 1 billion people who are undernourished, with iron deficiency, vitamin A deficiency. That's about 10 of you. Another billion is obese, not obese, overnourished, of which half is obese, which is a sickness also. That's another 10. So half of this room has a problem. This is what the world is today. And we are in the 3rd millennium. It's a shame. It's a real shame. So there's no equity, not enough food, not good quality food that we see in the world. Now, if you look at the proportion of people who were hungry in 1990, they were about 23%. Today they are 12.9%. So we have really half of the proportion of the world population which is hungry. So we have met somehow the Millennium Development Goal. However, we still have a huge number of problems and of people who are hungry. So the World Food Summit target of having half of the people hungry hasn't been met really. Why is that? So when we look at food security, everybody speaks about production all the time. But in FAO, according to what governments have agreed upon, food security is in 4 different aspects. Food availability is the first one, and availability is the capacity to produce food domestically or import food. Now, if you look at food availability, a country which calories per capita has enough food like India has the highest number of hungry people, 281 million. Latest statistics of 2015. So we do have a problem of distribution. We do have a problem of equity. We have a problem of, where the food goes. The second aspect of food security is access. Access means or you have the resources to produce your food, or you have the money to buy your food. And again, we have had recessions, we have inequities, we have natural resources with land grabs, we have different problems for which there is no access to the food. The third dimension is utilization of food. Now, if you look at the food security statistics, and the latest report is this one, that you can all have a look at, it's on the internet, you will see that one of the main problems in food utilization is actually access to clean water, sanitation, for which people are dying. You cannot really have clean food. So we do have a problem of utilization of food. And finally, what we all talk about, which is the stability of the food system. You can have the best food system, but it's going to be very open to vagaries like climate change, droughts, floods, macroeconomic problems, political problems, that are impacting. In fact, in Africa, the main reason for food security is really political instability. And today, we have the highest number since World War II of displaced people. It's not only because of food, but food has a big part in that equation. So it's around these 4 different dimensions that we had the conference on food security and organic agriculture in 2007, and looked at how organic agriculture can contribute to that. Of course, we cannot solve all the problems, but at least the governments, which is the Commission for Food Security, which has met in 2007, decided that in FAO's program on food security, we should look also at the option of organic agriculture. Okay. Now, we do many things in FAO, but we are also responsible for what we call a normative work, which is collect information, analyze it, bring it on the table for people to discuss it. And here you have one picture actually of Sustainable Theatre, which was done by Silvio Panini at the 2007 conference, which was very well received by delegates. And the other picture is a cooperation we had with IFOAM actually and ITC on harmonizing organic regulations. It's a project that went on for 10 years. This meeting was in Nuremberg in 2012, and imagine that on the table there, on the podium, you have the representative of the EU for organic and the representative of the US. And it was the first time they ever met. They were negotiating the equivalency which was signed on that occasion actually between the US and the EU, but they had never met in person. So bringing people together, and now with the Committee on Food Security, we have what we call the civil society mechanism. For the first time, civil society and private sector have the right to vote and take decisions together with governments on food security. Oh, okay. So what's the FAO position was another question which I was requested to present. We don't really have a position. Our position is what the countries want. And the countries want everything, and it's opposite. For example, we have had from Argentina requests to help them for their organic export, and at the same time for the GMO, They want both. Countries want everything, and we have to be able to respond to those demands. So in terms of project, I'm going to show you just a few slides. One which is characteristic of many things we do is helping countries to commercialize their smallholder agriculture so they can go on the market. This picture comes from India. Here you have these women working on, it was biodynamic vanilla actually, and this is Biofach India. And in the bottom you have some pictures of organic cotton from Uganda, where you have in these two countries the biggest numbers of smallholders. So helping those smallholders to improve, certify, go on the market and have more income. Another aspect of the work we do is what I call non-certified organic agriculture. And this is a picture, and it's my favorite project, I would say, from Tigray. Tigray is in northern Ethiopia, and it is the place where you had hunger in the early 80s. All those pictures of hungry children with big bellies that you've seen on the TV, those who remember that at least, were from Tigray. It was the most affected region for food security. Well, today they are food secure. How? Organic agriculture. They don't call it like that actually, but what they have done, they have had a champion, you always see the champion actually, who happens to be Tewolde, who is the director of the Environmental Protection Agency. He brought people together and said, hey guys, or we do it differently, or we die. We have no other option, because he's native from Tigray. Thanks God there was no too many development agencies applied, so we could work. We did help a little bit on doing some composting work, so they could double their cropping. They did a lot of rehabilitation of gullies, of planting, of agroforestry. And today, this region, at least when I visited it in 2009, this picture, they had about 1 million hectares of rehabilitated land where the water has come back and where they have enough food for the population. These people are not trading, but they're feeding themselves. And then when we talk about organic agriculture, we always think that it's backward, but I have seen a lot of innovation in organic field. This beautiful field is actually 2,800 hectares of organic vegetables in China. I really checked, there is not even one yellow leaf. It's amazing. It's bringing work to many of the villagers around it, and they're doing exporting frozen organic commodities from that area. At the same time, they're experimenting. They have scientists coming, and they have a lot of empirical work on the field. And here, for example, on the bottom, you can see a solar insect trapper. So they have a lot of methods, which are born really from the field, and also this merging with scientists to improve their system and be very competitive on the market. So what we see today, we've seen change at all levels. Consumers are changing. We were talking about young people a little bit ago, and they are requesting something different. Lenders are also changing. They're saying, hey, the natural capital is being eroded. What's going to happen when we have no more water? How are we going to produce? So even lenders are starting to put conditions, for businesses. Countries are asking increasingly different operations to internalize their negative impact. And most importantly, the boundaries of the planets are being stretched to the limit. On 13 August 2015, this year, was the Overshoot Day. I don't know if you all know what the Overshoot Day is. It's a very sad news, actually. We are using this capital beyond its capacity to be regenerated. So there is definitely need for change, and in Rio it was very clear that we need to change, but there is no agreement on what direction to take. So what is it that we need to do better? Here, I was in New Zealand a few weeks ago, and I saw this label, sustainable when growing. I said, oh, what is this? Is it organic? I don't know. Maybe it's very good. But the point is that as a consumer, as a layperson, there is now an increasing confusion about what organic is, what agroecology, eco-agriculture, green. India, in China, they have a lot of green food, for example, which is like an IPM type of thing. And there is today 170 different standards for sustainability. Some people think it's only a little bit of less climate emissions, and others, there's different interpretation of what sustainability is. And I think there is need to place organic with the pros and cons. There are benefits and constraints depending on the objective and the investment potential you have in this overall landscape of competing claims. This is a game which I like very much, what I do very often when we have courses. You know, we have this here, we were in Samoa, but often we have courses for national project directors. So what I do, I put everybody in a circle and they all have one piece. You can try it actually, it's fun. Everybody has one piece of rope that they hang on to, and they close their eyes. And 4 people at the 4 corners have to make a square out of the circle. When you try it, you can spend the whole afternoon, you will never have a square. The moment people open their eyes, the square is made in a minute. Awareness, intention, knowing where we're going. I think it's very important. Now, we have the tools today. Today, 1.7 billion people are connected somehow. In 5 years' time only, it will be 5 billion people. So we do have the tools to reach out to people. We need to communicate better the message. And one message that, Patrick, you were talking about is full cost accounting. I had another project on food waste in the last few years in FAO. It's a publication that you can look at with all the assumptions and how we made the calculations. And we looked at the full cost accounting of food waste. And I can tell you, so for every euro you are spending on one item of food, you have already spent €1 in terms of tax for environmental mitigation, safe water, whatever, and another euro for your health and your well-being that you have been losing because of the negative externalities of agriculture. So it's 3 times as much, and it's an underestimate assumption of how much food costs. Now, can't we reflect this somehow? I've seen that there is one system which maybe we could inspire ourselves from, which is called Good Guide. Good Guide is about healthcare system products. Now, an average conventional shampoo normally has about 50 different chemicals. 50 different chemicals. So what they do in Good Guide, and you can have like there's the IQ code, you photograph, and you go on the website and you can see it. They have the catalog of 250,000 different products, and they are all, you know, by safe, unsafe, controversial. So if, for example, you have one product which is carcinogenic, or suspected to be carcinogenic, or giving certain negative impact on health, it's written. And very often they say, this is controversial, we don't have scientific evidence. But as a consumer, when you have 50 different products where most of them have a problem, even if we are not sure about it, what happened when you look at that? Your amygdala goes like this. You don't think about it. You are not going to buy that product. So why I'm saying that? Because I've been working at FAO as an environmentalist for 31 years actually, not 20. On the most important issues, there is no scientific evidence and there will never be a scientific agreement. Look at climate change. We don't have scientific agreement on the most important issues, and especially when it's health related to the food, because we are exposed to so many things. It's very difficult to say glyphosate equal this. There are so many things that enter. There will always be a debate. I think we should move away from wanting to have scientific evidence and to say, this is what I suspect on this. This is on it. And when you have a long list of this, I think the consumer will vote with their dollar at that point. This is my view at least, and it would be nice to try it. Now my last slide is what needs to be done. We need to be re-indigenized. What does it mean? Indigenous means being connected to the land. Because if you're connected to the land, If you know how your seasons change, how your cloud change, you have a connection with a place. You have a different relationship. You respect the limit of that ecosystem. And I think there is a duty for all of us to come back to the land and have more local system where we understand and nature talks to us, it teaches us. We need to be sometimes maybe more spiritual, I would say. And this is not an FAO view to be spiritual, it's my view, but I hope in the future it will come to have more connection with the land. This is for a project in Bhutan. You know, we had to walk like 3 days to get to this place. It was an organic project actually, because they are using medicinal plants from the forest and all this biodiversity is disappearing. So it was about creating, domesticating some of those varieties that they use for Ayurvedic medicines locally. Okay, so this is the website of FAO on organic agriculture, and this is the picture of my granddaughter actually, because organic agriculture is still a child in FAO, but it's surely growing. You know, it will not go. It is coming back again and again. It is small, tiny, but hopefully it will be able to contribute more to the organic community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nadia. Thank you very much. Again, there are opportunities to ask questions. I don't know, anybody would like to ask? Yeah, Frank?
Thanks a lot for your presentation. Just one question, do you see any influence of the organic movement within the broader FAO mainstream? So do you see some positive trends influencing the mainstream within FAO?
Yes, definitely. First of all, now organic agriculture is mainstreamed in the sense that it's a topic like any other that government can come to us and ask for. It's not taboo anymore, so it's already a big thing. And every time that we have an event, it happens, that my colleagues come to me and ask me from some name from the organic community to invite. Like when we did the launch of the International Year of Soils for the World Food Summit and other events. They always think that being conveners mainly, they always invite the industry and they want to have an alternative so people can speak and can share, and there is this cooperation. And now the latest, I would say, priority in FAO is to work on agroecology. And when we had the agroecology conference last September, I think half of the room were organic people.
Okay, thanks. One more, Christopher.
Nadia, thanks very much for that talk. Could you just say a little bit about gender and women's issues? Because as I understand it, gender, the food production worldwide is actually in the hands of women, and the difficulty, the challenge is that the resources aren't invested in women, and therefore, again, that will disconnection. Is FAO concerned about these issues, or what do you think?
Oh yes, we have a whole division taking care of gender issues. It's a bit delicate, like the very first project we had about 10 years ago, and it was in West Africa, trying to have organic agriculture within the hands of women for the nutrition of their families. When they started being successful and having income and competing with their own husbands, the men came and destroyed all their cultivation. So there are issues, it's not always so easy. Well, when we have small programs like the telefood program, for very small scale, most of these projects are organic for women. Yes.
Okay, Nadia, thank you very much. We will hear more of you later. Now I think we want to give our next speaker the opportunity to make his contribution. Lucas actually comes from the perspective of a multi-country, so to say, so from many countries, but it's still on a country level, from the EU. So we move actually from the United Nations, where we have the overall, let's say, recommending role, to a role where you can really enter in regulation and have also quite different tools available to look at this issue of food security. Lucas, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Lukasz Wiesiek. I work in the European Commission in Brussels as the Directorate General for Agriculture and Rural Development in the unit that deals with the analysis of the Common Agricultural Policy and looks into the future on how the Common Agricultural Policy, what it should be like. Could I have my presentation, please? Right, thank you. So during my presentation, I would like to focus on three different things. Once I learn how to operate this one, I think we have heard a lot about the challenges that we are faced with, and I'll look at them again, perhaps from a slightly different perspective, and I will try to explain what these challenges, though global, but what they mean for us as policymakers in the European Union. I will also try to present some of the tools that we have, because I think so far we've heard a lot about what we're facing, what we will be facing, what the issues are, but I would like to really focus on the very practical side of it. So I would like to explain what tools we have to actually tackle these challenges, and to show you how it can work and how we can move forward with that. So the first challenge, I think we have heard some figures about the world's population. Do you have? Does anybody have an idea? Someone's. Oh, was that you? Does anybody have an idea about when the first billion of people was living on the planet, in which year? Any ideas? Shout, please. 1750, 1808. Sorry? 1900. So it was actually in 1804. So very good, very good. Then it took a very long time to reach 2 billion people. The second billion people was living on the planet in 1927. And then look what happens afterwards. So the message is that the population is growing very fast. We're adding currently about 1 billion people every 12, 14 years. And the trend, I think, has been quite stable. Now, there are different figures about how many people will be living on the planet in 2050. We've heard a figure of 9 billion people. The highest figure I've seen in my research is 10.6 billion people, but I've also seen figures by Deutsche Bank, which presumes that there's going to be 7.4 billion people. What we look at, however, is I think there are a few factors linked to it. First, the pace of the growth means a very, very heavy pressure on resources. Second, the growth of the population is different in different parts of the world. In 2050, I think most of researchers agree that Europe is not going to grow very much, but the population of Africa is probably going to double, the third thing is that the population is going to be aging. So whilst there is a certain movement to actually change diet patterns, there's also going to be people who will be old, and they will perhaps, as we know from nowadays practice, will be living under the poverty line. I think 16% of people in Europe live under the poverty line, and those people probably don't think that much about how food whether it's been produced in a sustainable way. It's the price that matters. Second thing, all these people have to be fed somehow in Europe. We have actually, let me look at the figure correctly, we have 1/3 of all the farmers in Europe older than 65 years, while only 1/4 of farmers is actually younger than 44. So what are we going to do? Who is going to produce all this food? We also have to understand that Europe is quite different from the rest of the world, and in our opinion, it's one of its main strengths. In fact, European agriculture is built on diversity. We have about 80% of farms which are smaller than 10 hectares, but there are 6% of farms which actually farm on 2/3 of land. And this is a system that we cannot disrupt. So the strength of European agriculture lies also in the fact that everyone can live next to each other and can remain prosperous. We've also mentioned, or other speakers have mentioned, the issue of land use. We have a big issue of soil sealing. We also have a big issue of the different interests and different parties trying to do something else on the land than produce food. For example, to produce energy, or to build a supermarket, or to build an airport, or to build a city. And then, of course, the challenge that is probably the biggest of all, and also the biggest unknown, is the climate change. Now, the climate change is seen most of the time very negatively, but we also have to think of climate change as an opportunity, because in some parts of Europe, if the projections are right, we'll just be able to produce something that we were not able to produce before. So let's look at it as also as an opportunity, but also, of course, bearing in mind that it is a major threat. Now, I will talk a bit about the tools. The Common Agricultural Policy has several ways of helping farmers to produce food sustainably and to respond to the issue of food security. The biggest instrument is called direct payments. Essentially, every farmer who receives support from the EU has to comply with what we call cross-compliance. That's a set of certain rules that prevent farmers from overusing nitrates in certain areas. It's a legislative and regulatory framework that makes farmers comply with some basic fundamental environmental and climate-related rules. We also have a possibility of paying farmers who wish to produce in a certain way on a voluntary basis to draw funds from rural development. We'll talk about that in a minute. And we also have this new component that was only introduced at the beginning of this year, and that is called greening. That's basically a reward for farmers to act in a certain environmentally friendly way. It involves practices like crop diversification, or introducing ecological focus areas on their fields. And outside of the regulatory framework of the Common Agricultural Policy, we have three other elements to which I'll come back as well, and that is the farm advisory system, which means that farmers have access to advice from researchers, from advisors who know their farm. We also have the European Innovation Partnership, so again, I'll keep that I'll come back to it in a minute, and agricultural research. In rural development, member states have the possibility to formulate strategies through which they provide farmers with certain ways of payments, either area payments or support to investments. For example, agri-environment climate commitments. So this means that farmers can take voluntary commitments over the period of at least 5 years, and they produce in a certain way which is environmentally friendly, which protects biodiversity, which protects the local habitats, which reduces the amount of inputs. And the way they are paid is that they are compensated for all the income loss and additional costs that they have in relation to carrying out these practices. One of the successful stories in Europe is also organic farming. Farmers again are paid, if they want to convert to organic farming, for the income loss and additional costs related to the conversion, but they can also be paid later on for maintenance of their organic farming. We also have, if you look at the column on the right, we also have support for cooperation, and this is where farmers and other little businesses can have access to support for supplying food locally. I was quite jealous when I was looking at Anatolia's shopping basket here, because we tried. I live in Brussels, so we try to subscribe to this weekly organic basket, and I think we subscribed sometime in May, and it was fantastic. We got very nice stuff. But let me tell you, living in Belgium in October, receiving celeriac, parsnips, and cabbage until May, it gets a bit boring. So I'm quite jealous of the choice that you have. One of the things that I also want to draw your attention, going back to organic farming, is that in Europe we actually have an organic logo, which where consumers know immediately that the product that they buy in has been produced is a product of organic farming. So I can guarantee that that on all of this, as long as it is organic, you will find the green flag with the leaf. So we actually have branding for organic farming, and I think it's probably it's quite successful. We also have a lot of money, and that's something that really matters. And I think we've heard earlier that things are not happening, and things haven't really changed. And you know, I'm a bureaucrat who works in an office, so I can only give you the figures. I don't know what happens to a certain extent. I don't know what happens in the fields, but I know what happens with the policy. So if you look at the figures, if you look at the colors, so this is the development of expenditure of the Common Agricultural Policy since 1990, and forecast until, well, not forecast, but that's written, it's cast in stone in legislation as it is going to happen by 2020. I want to draw your attention to two colors, and that's the green color. The green color represents the part of the CAP budget which is invested into environment and climate change, and you see that it's been steadily increasing since 2006, and it actually constitutes a big proportion of the CAP budget. I also want to draw your attention to the purple color. The purple color represents all the environment and the climate related funding that is channeled through rural development, and you also see that that part is increasing. Of course, this forecast is until 2020, and we'll have to do, and we're very strong in that in this programming period. We will have to do proper evaluations to actually see whether these policy approaches have made any change by 2020. So we have established that we have a few challenges. We have established that we have pressure on resources. So the outcome of this equation is that we have to do more with less. A part of that question was already answered in one of the videos. One of the things that we can do is actually to improve research. We know that there is a lot of research done. There is a lot of research results. there's also a lot of traditional farming practice, but what is lacking is the interaction between research and farmers. And there's also, what is also lacking is the interaction between farmers. We're trying to involve farmers in research as much as possible, and we're also trying to involve researchers and scientists in the everyday life on farms, so that we actually get practical results, and research just doesn't produce results for a drawer. One of the instruments which I think is going to be very successful, and I'm saying I think it's going to be because it's very new and it's not been tested yet, is the European Innovation Partnership for Agricultural Productivity and Sustainability. What it means is that farmers, researchers, advisors, local politicians can constitute what we call an operational group. It means that what this means is that this operational group can focus on a specific problem, and they can try to tackle something that is very local and that can have a local solution. And they get funding for this. They get funding for setting up, they get funding for all the administrative costs, they get funding for the research, they get funding for all the overheads, and they also are obliged to share the results with the rest of Europe. We also have research in Horizon 2020, and if you allow me just 1 second, I'll give you the exact figure. In Horizon 2020, which is the new research program for the EU between 2014 and 2020, we have 3.8 billion euros, out of which 1.8 is actually dedicated to agriculture. And here are some ideas that we're floating for as topics for the next few years. And I think the debate is actually opened on this until, don't quote me on this, but I think by the end of September. And we're trying to take stock in a public consultation about what people think, where the European research should go in the area of agriculture. And the last thing I want to share with you is this slide. I told you that the CAP has a lot of money. It's about 42 billion euros a year. That's enormous. But maybe it's not going to stay that way. We have agreed that it will stay this way until 2020. But then, before that, we'll start renegotiating the budget. And the member states will start renegotiating the budget with Parliament. And as we all know, there are very pressing issues which perhaps will take over the need to support agriculture. So we have to look into alternative sources of funding. And one of the ways is what we call financial instruments. And this is basically, in a very simple way explained, this is providing public money to banks and other financial institutions so that they can actually locally decide what projects to fund, because at the end of the day they know best what is locally needed. So with that, I would like to thank you for your attention, and I look very much forward to your questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lucas. I think quite inspiring also to look into the future, the thoughts which maybe we have never heard so far, which are beyond 2020. Of course, we have still a lot of discussion. Well, again, I can take a question. Bernard, Patrick, of course, first. One after Michael, yeah. Okay.
I have a question. When we look at the expenditure on the common agricultural policy up to 2020 and the greening element of it, which is quite large, if you take the figures that Nadia just quoted about food systems externalities, if we could give the Commission reliable data to show that the damaging consequences of the farming systems which currently predominate in the EU are costing in unpaid for, under quantified externalities as much as Nadia is suggesting, and I suspect it may be even more than that. Do you think that that would influence the policy setting process to make sure that the single farm payments, which is still I think you were very generous when you described the single farm payment as having green conditions. I would say you need to not break the law to get the single farm payment. I'm a farmer in receipt of the single farm payment, and the vast majority of the money that goes to farmers is within the common agricultural policy at the moment has few conditions attached to it. But if you were to attach it to truly sustainable farming systems, or farming systems which avoided negative externalities, that would enable the sort of farming systems that most people here would prefer to support to become mainstream. But as I said in my talk, at the moment there's not a strong enough business case to go in that direction. What would you say about that?
Okay, let's give Lucas a short moment actually to think about, and in the meantime I would like to ask all the panel to come here in front. We change a little bit the setting and come a bit closer to you, because we would like to talk now, talk to each other, talk among us, and I think Patrick already set the scene in actually challenging also things which have already been said. Patrick, please come here and take a seat here in front, and Lucas, maybe just sit next to Patrick, because that gives you the opportunity immediately to reply to that question. Antonio will also be part of that panel. Please come join us. And what I'm actually doing here is I put here on the edge 2 empty seats. And these empty seats will be for you. Whenever you feel, okay, I have to contribute something to discussion, I would like to be part, I would like to say something, I would like to challenge, I have a question, feel free, come in front, be part of it, and discuss here. I will take one seat over there, but one seat is free, it's the one for you. Whenever you feel okay, you have contributed what you wanted to contribute, you go back, make the seat free for another person. But it would be very nice if all the time somebody is sitting here and it would give you the opportunity. Okay, with that, okay, Bernhard already knows the rules. He's already part of it, that's how it works. Yes, that's how we will start actually. You have, yes, how are we going to start actually? You had the question. Patrick, yes, you have the mic in a minute, and I think that's a nice start into the question of the greening of the cap.
Yes, I will. There are three elements. There are three elements in my answer. First one is that this is the first year of implementation. We are legally obliged to actually report to the European Parliament about how the greening is performing. I've seen a lot of different figures about the performance of the CAP when it comes to environment, when it comes to greening. I've seen a lot of criticism. It's quite clear that no one really likes it, but I think what we really have to work with is evidence, and we just don't have the evidence yet. We will have it, but we don't have it, because, as I said, it's the first year of implementation, and the way administratively it works, we will only know in the beginning of next year, when all the farmers' applications come in and the information is synthesized. We will only know how the system works in the first year. So that's the first thing. Second thing is that we have 28 member states. We have over 700 members of the European Parliament. The Commission puts forward proposals which were quite a bit more green, and a lot of it was watered down through the legislative process. I'm not saying anything. But it's not a taboo. I mean, it's been watered down. So we can only have such policy, which is actually agreed on by 28 member states and by almost 800 members of the European Parliament. That's the reality. It's a bit like Nadia was saying about the position of UN on organic farming. They have 192 bosses. We have 800 bosses. That is the reality. And the third element, I apologize for this long answer, but I would like to explain this. The third element is that policy is something that is more an opportunity rather than a regulation. You probably know that France has actually legislated agroecology as its main philosophy for agriculture for the next few years. There are other member states who will probably focus more on supporting livestock, although on Monday, when 4,000 tractors are supposed to be driving through Brussels because of the milk prices, I'm sure you will. You kind of question why member states actually put more money into producing more milk if the price is going down. So all that said, it is an opportunity for policymakers in member states to actually use it the way which they see fit, best for their member state.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, let's move on in our dialogue to react to each other's statements. I think now is a chance for Nadia to talk if you have something. Yes, well, you just question, you go back and forth with your colleagues, or let me first go to Patrick back, because you said, while Nadia talked, you said you want to react to the question of the sustainability claims.
Well, I just noticed, Nadia, that on the one hand you were worried about a label in New Zealand which referred to a sustainable vineyard, but on the other hand you drew our attention to the, what was it called, the good products, or the good guide, which gives consumers information about the sustainability or aspects of the sustainability of the products. It seems to me that although we need to avoid confusion, what's really needed is as much information as possible about the sustainable credentials of products that they buy. And speaking as an organic farmer, I would like to see a move towards sustainability metrics which allow people to make their own decisions about how sustainable a product is. I'm not saying we should go away from organic, but I think we need something which is not either you are organic or you're not organic, or rather which can reach out into the rest of the production system so that everybody is on a journey towards more sustainable practice, and you can have metrics which the Commission would, of course, would endorse, which would allow consumers to make their own individual judgments about how farmers have gone. So although I agree with you there's a risk of confusion, the problem we've got at the moment is you either buy organic products or 90% of the products are non-organic and then therefore presumed bad, which is not true of course. So we need to find a way of making it more flexible, which is what you were kind of saying with the Good Guide. What do you think about that?
I fully agree with you, actually. If I gave the impression that I did not like that label, it's wrong. It's just, it's confusing, and we don't know what's what anymore. And I must say that there's out there many big companies that are really surfing on this for greenwash. And this is where I was heading at, actually. This is another conversation, you know, but we need to really, you know, have this landscape, as you say, you know, of what is it.
Right. I also get the impression that we're touching a bit tomorrow's topics.
The presentation, and I have to say, yes, I was there in '99, the core meeting that I was a world member of IFOR, and it surprised me, and I think it's interesting to see that in the morning we had the session of the COGS with the ministry representative, and they were deciding to support the organic officially inside FAO. And the same governments in the afternoon were approving GMO. So in a way, a contradiction we have in our systems. Also in the European level, policy. Okay, finally, it was a big struggle, and it was not by the organic farmers alone, but together with the civil society, that we achieved to have a little bit less marginalized policy for organic farming, because until I think now, we are doing organic farmers with a diverse system of production was penalized by the common agricultural policy. It was not giving a help, but penalized. You get less than if you're doing conventional. And on the research as well, we achieved to have a little bit of organic research or sustainable, low input, whatever, because we cannot sometimes talk fully about organic, but you have to talk about this low input, and nobody knows what it is. We put that magic words inside our projects. But at the same time, we have research driven by unsustainable practice. I give you an example. I'm coming from a fruit production region. And we just had a very big international European conference on cherry production. All the new varieties are all sucking too much water, and they are drafted to be small ones, and non-sustainable. And it's already happening. In my region, at least, we know that we have less water, and in some areas where there is a huge production of in India of kiwi fruit, there is already the fight between the farmers and the people to get them access to water. Why are we financing this kind of research? And we still are going on this production without limits and without thinking about consequences of what we're doing.
Okay, thank you. I think now turn is on Bernhard, our guest in the panel.
Yes, I like swimming, but I don't like to be a fish in a bowl. It's a caged animal. But anyway, I want to build on Patrick's first input and make an additional suggestion. Why don't we tax polluter pay principle, tax nitrogen fertilizer, tax pesticides, start taxing, I know it has to be a process, and use that money to replace, if tax paying EU citizens are not willing anymore to subsidize the stupid system so far in place. To your input question, you talked about the people influencing, and there is an enormous imbalance in the lobbying force. There's an inequality. If I see the Monsanto likes there, the conventional farmers there, in contrast to the little I from EU group and others who try to bring the organic cause in center stage. We have to work on this, and I think it's the obligation of the EU, Commission and Parliament to counter this imbalance. I'm not an anti-lobbyist. It's therefore as much as to whom they listen.
Surely you can't blame the Commission for us not being a strong enough lobbying force. That's our fault.
No, it's a question of means. I mean, we never have the means of Monsanto, and I'm not saying it's their fault. I'm appealing that they balance it off by whom they listen, to what extent, and they can create a bit more fairness, which cannot be ever compensated by us in financial means. We're never going to win the battle on that ground.
But we've got to put ourselves in their position, including Nadia, because I mean, Nadia said it's the member states it's the member states of FAO that make policy. You can't really blame the officials for being puppets in this world of. Well, I don't mean that in a rude way. I just mean at the end of the day, you have to obey what you're told by the member states. Is that all right? Within reason.
Okay.
Just add to Antonio, when we had the iPhone World Congress '98 in Argentina, it was in the very same place, in the very same days, when it was the introduction of the Monsanto, it was a scientific conference call, it was a propaganda show in the Sheraton Hotel, while we moved to another hotel, we had originally booked the Sheraton, couldn't pay, when they introduced GMO. So there is a lot of coincidences which are really strange.
Thank you very much. I think we're turning time and again back to this question of true cost accounting, and I would like to quickly show a video at this stage which also deals with that topic, and I think after that we can continue on this favorite topic, as I can see here on this round. So can I have video number, wait a minute, video number 4, not 3, 4 actually.
This video looks at how policy can make farming more sustainable and help us overcome this problem. For instance, Huge amounts of data show that the modern food system is extremely wasteful. Inefficient irrigation means that we squander vast amounts of precious water, while many farmers apply more fertilizers than plants can use. These excess nutrients run off fields and pollute rivers and lakes. What's worse, Westerners waste between 30 and 50% of the food we buy. Surely, if we simply cleaned up our act, we wouldn't have to worry so much about the future of our food system, right? Economists give us a way to think about this problem by talking about negative externalities. Negative externalities are costs of producing food that the market doesn't account for. For instance, if a farmer doesn't pay for the water he or she uses, then the value of the water would be external to the price the consumer pays for the food, and hence there would be no incentive for the farmer to conserve this resource. Similarly, if a farmer pollutes a river and the price of the food from that farm doesn't include the price of cleaning up the river, then the cost of pollution is another negative externality. These hidden costs mean farmers who waste resources or pollute the environment actually do better economically than farmers who steward their land. For instance, if farmers don't pay for the water they use, then a farmer who uses inefficient irrigation may be able to offer consumers cheaper food than a farmer who spends her or his money investing in more efficient watering systems. In the 1990s, a group of scientists calculated that, in the United Kingdom, externalities like polluted water, damaged habitats, soil erosion, and food poisoning caused £2.3 billion worth of damages in 1996 alone. The British royal family was not amused. Prince Charles regularly talks about the future of farming, where he argues that we need to include in the bottom line the true costs of food production, the true financial costs, and the true costs to the earth. Many argue that because of negative externalities, policies are needed to ensure that farmers, processors, retailers, and consumers pay the full cost of producing our food. There are a number of ways of doing this. One is to pass laws that make farmers pay for the things they use from the environment. Mostly this has been tried in irrigated farming systems where countries have experimented with charging farmers more for the water they draw from aquifers or wells. Another way is by paying farmers for ecosystem services, which is a fancy way of saying the things that the environment gives us. For instance, the European Union has policies that pay farmers for maintaining wildlife habitat and biodiversity. This is useful because it creates an incentive for farmers to tolerate wildlife that might otherwise simply be seen as a pest. A third approach is to tax pollution or waste. If policies are enacted that make us bear the full price of our food, then it stands to reason that food prices will go up. And if food prices rise, it also stands to reason that we will throw less out. This may be a particularly useful strategy in terms of getting consumers in the West, who throw out huge amounts of food, to become more efficient. But while such approaches may sound ideal, there may be unintended negative consequences. In particular, policies that force consumers to bear the full cost of their food might also cause a rise in food insecurity and malnutrition for those consumers who could not afford to pay more for food. So, while it is vitally important for policymakers to develop strategies to correct negative externalities, such strategies must go hand in hand with other policies to protect the poor from the negative effects of price increases. This video looks at how policy can make farming more sustainable and help us overcome this problem. For instance, huge amounts of data show...
Come back, please. Okay. Patrick, you want to react immediately? Share your impressions about the video?
I think that is a brilliant summary of the need for true cost accounting, and I'd be very interested to hear what you thought of that. Have you seen that before?
I saw when Marcus sent it. Yes, I saw this video. I mean, there's one thing just to react to what was said before about taxation. I mean, taxation is not a power that the European Commission has, and that's something that simply is a national issue. So if someone wants to tax soft drinks, negative externalities, then they have to do it on their own, or they have to agree on giving up that competence and giving it to Brussels.
Yeah, but you could make the receipt of Pillar 1 money conditional on farmers avoiding farming systems which cause negative externalities. That will be within the power of the Commission if the Member States agree it.
I mean, in a way, this is what greening is to a certain extent trying to do by obliging farmers to crop diversification, to have, as you saw, to protect wildlife habitats. That's what I refer to as ecological focus areas. There's also an obligation to keep permanent grassland. So in a way that is there, also through cross-compliance, which you said this is basically a payment for acting, for being legal. Yes. But you still have to do it. And let's not forget, and there's another element that was mentioned in the video, all the agro-environment and climate schemes that the common agricultural policy pays for. There are a lot of farmers who decide to go that way. I mean, we have a very good new thing in the south of Netherlands where they go for a collective approach. So basically, it's an area of several thousand hectares. I can't remember the figure. But it's an area where all the farmers in that area actually cooperate together, so that they maximize the environmental effects in that area. Because what happens otherwise is that if you have one island of a farmer who acts in an environmentally friendly way, and then all his neighbors do not do the same thing, and it's completely useless. And that's the way forward.
Thank you very much for emphasizing also the need for collective action. Now, Christopher, you have joined the panel.
Thanks. Yeah, I just was getting concerned that we weren't thinking about issues of governance. And from that point of view, Lucas is right. The EU Commission has little opportunity to act in the way that Patrick would like them to act, and nor in a sense does the FAO, because what actually causes the negative externalities is to a large extent corporations acting with little governance. There's little control that can be exercised. And if you look at the diluting and greening that Lucas referred to, that was to a large extent as a result of the influence of business interests. So if you look at the ambitions of Commissioner Chios at the outset, they were scuppered, they were ruined, they were spoiled by lobbying from business interests that are sort of outside your control. And I think we often, and this is what I would like the panel's comments on, we often fail to acknowledge the fact that those that give us the biggest problems are outside of our control. And so as you walk up through this expo, you see individual nation states, immensely diverse and fascinating food cultures and food stories. And at the end of the line on the right, you have the McDonald's stand, which is just another stand with a balloon of Happy Meals. And actually it's McDonald's that's setting the agenda, and it's McDonald's that we find it hard to influence. And even if McDonald's was to change its sourcing policy, for example in the UK they buy organic milk, they're still part of a globalised, bland, non-diverse, standardised food production system which plays into the hands of producing negative externalities. So how come, the question I have is, how do we achieve a level of governance at an international level that can bring these corporations to account or enable them to disinvest, to find a way to get rid of what they're doing and stop it and change the whole business model? Because ultimately, unless we do that, we're going to find it hard to make the sorts of difference that needs to be made. So governance, how do we achieve it?
Nadia, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, actually I would have many comments. First of all, the multinational corporations have a huge budget which puts things in a balance. For example, it was already, maybe 20 years ago that we made the calculation, but it still holds today. The budget that the agrochemical companies have for publicity, but only for publicity, was 6 times as much as international agricultural research. 6 times as much. It still holds, I think, if it's not even worse now. So there's this imbalance, and they have a very big power, in being almost like terrorists, at least in developing countries. They are the ones, when there is any campaign on something, going and distributing what their input they have. So you have this that exists. And I think it's very difficult. When we were in Tigray in 2009, and the way we did the conference, we took all 15 countries from the Horn of Africa to Tigray to see what's happening in a positive sense, the example I showed you. And for 3 days they would ask questions to extension officers, to people, and they were totally convinced that that was the way forward, and they wanted to go ahead. And after we went back to Addis Ababa and we were having our conference, and we had working groups, one country said to me, and it's representative of what's happening, he said, this person said, when I go to my minister, whether it's organic or GM, he couldn't care less. He's going to ask me, where is the money, what are we going to get out of it? Cars, computers, goods. And this is what's happening now. I mean, we have both kinds of projects in FAO, but those who have more means are those who move forward because of this money power. And I think that the change is not going to come from that kind of campaign and changing the policies. I mean, yes. Somehow it's going to come from the basis, from consumers. And it's, for the moment, all consumer surveys you do, they come with wishful thinking or the kind of results you really want them, that yes, this is important, the environment, but actually this is not the way they shop. So we do have a discrepancy between what they say and what they know and where they put their money. Because at the end of the day, they are not really aware of the full cost that they are already paying. They don't trust the system. There are many things that could be improved to make things different.
Okay, thank you, Nadia. I would like now to tie in your part of it.
Thank you. Nadia, this probably comes mostly as a question to you, if you can give some of us some insight. But in 2008, Dr. Hepperly and Dr. Amadou Diop and myself published a white paper that really looked at a meta-analysis on sustainable organic farming and development, and the ISTAT report, of course, was a crucial element of that. That made its way into FAO, but it seems to have been submerged, and I've heard people talk about it being pushed under the table at FAO. When in fact the research is already in place, we all know what a regenerative approach to agriculture can do to feed the hungry. Is it back to your comment that you just made about money now influencing the outcome of research like that, not making its way to implementation? Is that the problem?
Yes, somehow, to come back to this report, actually in 2009, 2010, we had a cooperation with Hans Herren, who was the chair of the ASTD report, to kind of revive this report. And we did some further printouts, and he went around to countries, and 64 countries signed to this report. But because it's controversial, it's remained there. It's there, we use it sometimes, but it's there. And everybody would say yes, but there's no agreement on it. So this is what happened in terms of that report.
I think now what we do, we had to look at a little bit of the question of regulation. I would like to move forward. Frank, you will get the opportunity later on also to make your contribution. And I would like to look at the next video, which actually looks at the concept of distribution. So we come a little bit back to our topic. Okay, you want to watch. Yeah, so I need actually the video number 3, and we come back more to the roots of our topic, which we call feeding the world.
This video looks at how better food distribution can help us overcome this problem. For instance, United Nations data show there are almost 2,800 calories produced on the planet per person per day. This is more than enough for everyone to live a healthy life. However, because our food is unevenly distributed, and because we waste roughly 1/3 of our food, there are about 870 million hungry people worldwide. Meanwhile, another 1.5 billion adults are overweight or obese. Arguments about food distribution date back to the 1980s when the Nobel laureate Amartya Sen published the groundbreaking book Poverty and Famines. In it, Sen argued that food insecurity is not caused by a lack of food so much as a lack of economic and political power that allows citizens to demand food in a global market that includes the ultra-poor and the ultra-rich. There are at least 3 ways experts think we can correct this imbalance. First, some point out that since the US uses about 40% of its corn for ethanol, we have a conflict of food versus fuel, and more food would be available if the US dropped this policy. But there are two key counter-arguments. First, producing ethanol only uses the sugar in the corn and leaves protein-rich byproducts that are fed to animals. So it's not as if these grains, the vast majority of which would have been used to feed livestock anyways, have been taken out of the food system. The second reason is more important. The people on the planet who need food most are too poor and too remote to be able to afford it. So it's not certain that there would be any fewer hungry people on the planet if the American government simply stopped subsidizing ethanol. Second, it's clear that some parts of the world have too much food and some too little. So, shouldn't it be possible to simply export food from surplus regions like the US and Canada to areas that don't have enough, like Africa? Say by giving it away as food aid? Unfortunately, food aid drives down agricultural prices in the developing world, and this hurts farm incomes, which is important since most of the world's poor are farmers. As a result, most development agencies are moving away from using food aid except as short-term humanitarian relief. A third strategy is for wealthy consumers to simply eat less meat, and in particular meat that comes from resource-intensive factory farms. This is because it takes many kilograms of grain to produce a much smaller amount of meat, and so advocates for vegetarian diets argue that our grains would go further if they were eaten directly by people instead of being fed to animals. The problem with this approach, however, is how to do it. Global data show meat and dairy consumption rising fast, and while it might be nice to think that in the future humanity's diet will be less taxing, for now there is no evidence to suggest that this is going to happen anytime soon. But this doesn't mean that there is nothing we can do to better distribute food. One strategy is to maintain larger food reserves as a buffer against shortfalls. In the past, the UN funded strategic grain reserves that African nations would use to keep prices level in times of crop failure. But this program was prone to corruption and mismanagement, as well as being expensive, so it has fallen out of use. Because of this, global and national food stocks have fallen over the past 10 years to the point where today many worry we are just one bad harvest away from a major humanitarian catastrophe. As a result, calls are growing to establish food reserves that would keep prices level. While there is discussion as to who should own such stocks and how they should be governed, the fact remains that having significant food reserves is a crucial strategy to promote a resilient global food system. In the end, though, arguments about food storage, bioethanol, and North American diets needs to be seen against the bigger issue of poverty. All the food in the world won't help if people are too poor to afford it. Therefore, along with the strategies noted above, we also need to have programs that work with the poor to develop small-scale enterprises, such as loaning women in Africa enough money to set up market gardens and start raising small-scale livestock like rabbits, chickens, or goats. Properly done, such strategies give poor farmers the capability to lift themselves out of poverty.
This video looks at how better food distribution can help us overcome this problem. For instance, United Nations data show there are almost 2,800 calories produced on the planet per person.
Once is usually enough. So can I invite the panel back? Actually, it has become smaller. Patrick, unfortunately, had to leave. His plane is leaving soon. So we lose one of the panelists. But nevertheless, that makes one more free seat actually for you guys also to join. And yes, so the opportunity is actually yours to react on the distribution issue.
Well, I have one major comment to this video, which is really misleading, because it's showing that, you know, if you have this small-scale project you're going to solve, this is what we do as our daily bread, really, these small projects with women and small animals and investments and so forth. The countries in the analysis for the food insecurity of 2015, you see that the countries that have come out of the crisis of famine are really those who have invested a lot in safety nets, in cash transfers. There's 118 countries globally that do give cash transfers. And without this kind of help for the more vulnerable people, it's really impossible to get out of it just by having production systems, better production systems. And of course, I would like to reiterate what I said before, that problems of sanitations and political instability and economic recessions are much bigger than agriculture. And I don't think that through such approaches only within agriculture we're going to get out of the problem.
And as you see that, because I mean, we were often blamed actually to have also a subsidized policy for export products.
No, I think that this slide, which I can bring back, with the different colors showing the different levels of expenditure, will clearly show you that the times of export refunds is gone. There are no export refunds now at all. So I think that argument is gone. The other thing is that what has changed over the past few decades is that you probably have all seen the series of Yes Minister and Yes Prime Minister, where Sir Humphrey talks about visiting Brussels and talking to one official who is in charge of producing mountains of butter and lakes of wine, and then talking to another who is in charge of compensating farmers for getting rid of the butter mountains and wine lakes. So that's also not happening anymore, because all the support is what we call uncoupled or decoupled. That means that basically the support is not linked to a specific type of production. The farmers simply paid per hectare, and it makes no difference what he or she produces. So I think that in Europe the policy is getting there. There's another element that I wanted to mention, which is food waste, and that actually I was part of a project called Fusions, which is still going on with your colleagues from UNEP. And there I learned some interesting figures. In Africa, 90% of food that is wasted before it reaches the consumer. And then at the consumer level, practically nothing is wasted. In Europe and in North America, figures are extremely unreliable, I have to say that, but 30–40% of food is actually wasted by households. And the reason why I'm saying that is that I want to point you to a very interesting study by the University of Coventry that I have come across quite recently. They've done a simulation of projected growth of population in London and in Berlin, and they've applied a certain algorithm they put a few elements into the equation with the aim of ensuring that the growing population in those cities has enough to eat in, I think, 2050. And basically, what the elements that they put in was 2 days a week only vegetarian, reduce household waste by I think it was 10%, and increase shopping from local farms by X%, and that way they actually they achieved the same need for agricultural land in 2050 for a much higher number of inhabitants. It's just a study, but it's quite fascinating to see how each of us can actually make a difference in our own individual lives. We don't need to ask politicians in Brussels or in capitals to actually to bring about the change. So if you are interested, it's the University of Coventry.
Thank you. Sonia?
Yeah, just picking up what you just said, because I think the individual is the engine. Against the big corporation that have no individuals, because our stakeholders are the pension funds or investment capital and so on. And about the government that are also people that are influenced, the politician influenced by the other people, by the citizen. If if each of us, and it's the story of organic farming, because if it was for the interest of the big corporation, it would not happen to be like this, or the big trade companies that are standardizing our food and bringing a lot of problems, and also on a security level because of the concentration of land grabbing, land that is not anymore farmed by families, and or thinking about the opportunity we need to have because we need a new generation of farmers. The farmers we have now, they lost the spirit of farming. Most of the farming in Italy is done by others that are coming with tractors and put the seeds and everything, and you just land the land. It's not that the security, what we need, what we as single citizens, individuals would like to know. And I think it's extremely important, the education factor, and the example factor, and to reach out and to have, I'm a little bit optimistic because we have people like Nadia, because without some individuals, even inside, if they respond to a much higher level, it's really the difference they can make. In each level, in our families, but also in the governments and the intergovernmental buildings.
Okay, thank you. Actually, our discussion is almost coming to an end here. I would like to raise one thing which struck me here in these videos. Twice he came to the point that the fragility of our system is increasing because we have less stocks, we have less reserves. And I don't know whether FAO has made some study whether this is really true, first of all. Second of all, whether you see some threats in that, and whether you support actually the suggestion to say, okay, more storage rooms need to be built, and that this fragility actually to have less stocks has to be addressed.
Well, this is a big debate actually, the food stocks. We made a study in 2008 when we had the food price crisis to see what were the reasons. One of them was because food stocks did not exist, and now they are privatized, I must say, and there are smaller food stocks, so we are using much more than we're putting food stocks. But again, having food stocks, I don't know, it's too expensive, and in a globalized world, maybe it's a bit more complicated for their governance and so forth. It's an ongoing debate. But when it comes to food prices, which is something which was mentioned also here, it's also a very, very complex dynamic. Only 25 of the agricultural producers are actually eating from their land. They don't have to buy food. So higher prices mean that almost everybody has to buy food, and if it's more expensive and you're poor, it's a cost. But then on the other hand, and this is where the Seoul Association has made a study, because the food prices are so low, agriculture is not a feasible activity anymore, and agriculturists are having to leave the land and go to cities and creating slums and having all the unemployment problem, because all these people come, many of these people come from rural areas. So it's not a straightforward thing. The dynamics are very, very complex, and to have people coming back to rural areas, they have to have also other services like hospitals and schools. So it's not an easy thing to say. It is sure that I would like to end up with food cost accounting, that everything will change with a different consciousness. For example, the meat revolution is still ongoing. In fact, for 2050, we need to produce 70% more meat. It's going to be a disaster. And with people, we did a study also on what that costs for the environment, for people, for everything. It's really like 60% of grains would be fed to animals. I mean, it's a big disaster. Now, if we had a recognition, like a strong recognition, for example, on the carcinogenic effect of eating too much meat, or on the antibiotic resistance, I think that overnight you will see massive change in diets in the world. For the moment, you still have this trend where developing countries now they have more money and they think that they are copying our bad system in the Western world and wanting to eat more meat every day and so forth. So I think really food cost accounting has a lot to bring, but it has to be reliable information, or at least something that talks to people, and this alarm is being raised actually from all different perspectives. And one thing that everybody agrees upon, including all politicians in FAO and EU, is that we need to change, and we have a problem in the current food system. You would see that, for example, even in a country like New Zealand, for the first time this season, there was 8 dairy farmers that committed suicide because of debt. So it's not an Indian problem anymore. It's really spreading very fast, and it's becoming a major social concern everywhere.
Okay, thank you, Nadia. This was really a wrap-up of the whole session a little bit to see where are the issues. We see it's extremely complex. I would like to give Lucas the same opportunity to say a final word, say some final thoughts on this very first session.
Well, I'm taken a bit by surprise, I have to say, to wrap up. But no, I would like to maybe two things that, although I'll repeat myself. One thing that is where we're quite strong in Europe is the diversity. We have a lot of small farmers. Look at Romania. We have a lot of big farmers. Look at my country, Czech Republic, where the average size of a farm is, I think, 300 hectares, while in the EU it's 14. And it's that diversity and, above all, the added value that we give to the food that we produce, which has made us the biggest exporter of food in the world. Of course, we have all the French wines and the whiskey and that involved, but it's the added value. That's the strength. That's the strength that we have, and that's something that we have to keep in mind for the future. That we have to build on. We have to build on this diversity. We have to continue supporting innovation, so that we don't see the train of new things leaving towards the east, which might be happening. And the second thing that I wanted to say is, going back to my presentation, is that the principles of the EU agricultural policy were put into the treaty in 1954, I think, 58. Anyway, don't quote me on that. Anyway, it's been more than 50 years that the CAP has been around. It's gone through its certain path. It's changed a lot. The context has changed even more. So I think it's time to think what it is going to look like after 2020, because the context is, I think, changing faster than it used to.
Okay, thank you, Lucas, for reminding us about complexity, about diversity, and also the time dimension, and that one thing is certain, there will be change. Our last word, Antonio, will be yours. So there is a, let's say, last reflection from your side. With that one, I would like to wrap up this session. Say that also. Thank you very much, Antonio.
Okay, I think we have to also think about changing behavior about the food. We cannot just substitute. Like, there is also a shortcut for organic farming, a substitution of inputs. That's normal in big farms in Europe, mostly, not only in Europe, outside of Europe. And the same is thinking that we can change without not change. I mean, to be more sustainable without changing habits. We need to reflect, and maybe we have some recipes. In the Mediterranean, we have some recipes that we can bring out. That is, use less meat. But I mean, I'm eating meat here. There is no meat, but just because there is no meat in the supermarket here. But the meat, is fish. And actually, I'm not buying this, but I take it from the local rivers. The question is that I use meat, but for example, local breeds of pigs that are being reintroduced in my area using marginal area, so it's not taking away and eating a lot of what there is. And an old breed of cow that is not the specialized one we are, even in organic farming, using too much. This is a very old, very, very old breed. When we started the program to renounce that they were only 200, is a slow food Presidia, the white Montanese cow. There's a tribal attitude, meaning you can get beautiful milk, wonderful, not so much as the fries in Frison or black and white, but you have exceptionally good cheese, but you have also very good meat, and you have also labor that maybe tomorrow it could be useful. and anyway, you have an animal that is living 12 to 13 years, that is adapted to local conditions, doesn't need any drugs, because he knows how he gives birth without any assistance. So these kind of things are solutions that sometimes we have in our culture, and then we have to use it, to transfer, to make it possible with innovation to have food for everybody, but not just food, quality food that we need, because we cannot just eat food and then eat medicine because to replace it. And one thing, just to wrap up, an example of what I read very few weeks ago, a report on the change of Mexico diet through the invasion of the big operation of food, that first they took the small tiendas and start selling the cheap food, is substituting the normal food, local food they were using, and then again the normal pattern, big supermarkets, and no more tiendas. And what is the result? You have a percentage of obesity and a related problem of health that is incredible in a country like Mexico, where they have a food culture and tradition so big. This is not possible. We need to change this way, and maybe, like we said at the beginning, the new generation taking the spirit of us and multiplying it and bringing it to a critical mass that make change possible.
Okay, thank you, Antonia. Actually, thank you, everybody. We're going to do the session. We will take a break now. In 20 minutes, we will continue. Actually, it's the second round of speakers, but I think now we always have a break. Thank you, everybody, for being part.